Hi. Not that long ago, my friend introduced me to Apex Legends, and I became addicted. This game is sick.
Oh, he's won.
I have spent the last 3 months researching, studying, and practicing my ass off. So here's everything that I know about Apex Legends. 20 teams of 3, 60 players in total, drop from a flying machine down onto one of the 4 different maps below. Kings Canyon, the OG. World's Edge, which no one really complains about. Olympus, which everyone loves. Storm Point, which everyone apparently hates.
Okay, first game of the day, boys.
Players begin looting the guns and items that they'll need to survive, and the fight begins. As the game progresses, a storm comes in that damages all players and shrinks the playable area. Players must stay within the safe zone and fight the other teams to survive. The last team standing is the champion. As we said, the goal is to survive. How do you do that? Kill the other players. Dealing damage to a player's hitbox, the area of a character that will register inflicted damage, by use of bullets, grenades, or abilities will lower their shields and health. When the player's health and shields reach 0, they will be knocked. In a knocked state, nearly all of the player's controls are restricted, and they are unable to participate in combat. They can move around slowly, and they can raise a shield to protect themselves and their teammates. They're like a little turtle walking through the road and trying to not get run over. A knocked player is still in the game though, and they have the chance for a teammate to revive them. To completely eliminate them from play, they must be dealt another 100 damage, or all their squad mates must also be knocked. If a player is eliminated, but a squad mate survives, the eliminated player can be resurrected for another chance at any active respawn beacon. Now keep in mind, you're playing with real people here. Each player's computer or console is sending thousands of individual number sets to the game's server, the online place where the game is run. The game is constantly updating the location of every player and every bullet, object, item, death box, grenade, ult, tactical for every player thousands of times every second. That's insane. Technology is insane. So you want to make sure that you have a low ping, which is the time it takes for your console to send and receive information from the server. The higher your ping, the worse your game will be. So, you're intrigued. You want in the video Hunger Games. You want to throw your proverbial hat into the closing storm ring, eh? Well, before you can be a good teammate, you have to have some personal skill and knowledge. Ultimately, even after all the other concepts we're going to cover, and believe me, it's a lot, the fundamentals are gameplay. This is a shooty bang bang game after all. And if you have any hope of trying to win, you're gonna have to hit your shots. And you're gonna have to not get shot too many times. You'll need to familiarize yourself with all the different gun classifications. You'll need to know all the ammo types. You'll need to understand each specific gun. Some guns have rather large mag sizes, but some have low DPS. Others have high DPS, but difficult recoil. You'll need to understand mags or clips, stabilizers, stocks, sights, and mods hop-ups. Which ones go to which guns and why? And how do they change your gun? We won't go through all the guns or gun types because I want this video to be relevant in the future. But here's a basic walkthrough of some of the stuff that should remain relatively the same. Light guns have the lowest damage output, but are the most reliable and easiest in terms of their recoil. Energy guns seem to have the highest damage output, other than shotguns. but they are more difficult to use in terms of recoil. Shotguns work really well for outputting high damage quickly, but they suck at range. Sniping is incredibly difficult in this game. It's obviously great at range, but also how you trying to hit that shot from 500 meters away, eh? SMGs have a high fire rate and work at close ranges. LMGs have a medium fire rate and work at medium range. I think, anyway, they're all machine guns. It's so hard to tell, man.
Apparently everyone has pretty much always loved the R301, the Hemlock, the Peacekeeper, the R99, and the Wingman.
You theoretically can't go wrong with these guns, even probably maybe in future seasons. Now, what we're about to talk about may seem obvious to you, but it was not obvious to me. The shooting is almost a minigame. You have to move the center of your screen to be on your target. But I didn't realize your good aim is more about lining up your shot quickly than it is about doing it at all. Unlike real life shooting, where there's a lot more finesse and complexity and nuance of movement, video game shooting is essentially a game of point and click. Almost anyone can hit a video game shot if they're given enough time. It's about being able to line up your shots fast. Good aim doesn't just mean accuracy, it also means fast accuracy. In addition, it's basically a minigame of moving your stick or your mouse downwards to compensate for the recoil of the gun going upwards. When I first started playing Apex, I didn't even realize how recoil in games worked. So you'll need to learn the recoil pattern of each gun. Ideally, you can one-clip the standing dummies with every gun in the firing range. You'll want to master both hipfire and ADS, or aim down sight modes, on all guns. In addition to guns, there are quite a few more items and mechanics that players have at their disposal. All items function on a colored leveling system. Level 1 is white, level 2 is blue, level 3 is purple, level 4 is gold, level 5 is red. So here's a bunch of shit at your disposal in no particular order.
Medkit here. Syringe here.
You're not limited to 100 points of health damage. You can regen your health with medkits and syringes.
Body shield here.
Give yourself more protection on top of your health bar by using body shield.
Got an Evo shield here.
There are Evo shields that level up as you do damage in game.
Shield battery here.
Use batteries and cells to regenerate.
Phoenix kit here.
Phoenix kits will completely top you up to full health and shields. Grenades are throwables that inflict different types of damage. Use these to change the tide of battle. A knockdown shield is to protect yourself if you are knocked down.
Mayday.
The gold one lets you self-resurrect.
Helmet here.
The helmet lowers incoming headshot damage. The gold one speeds up your tactical ability cooldown. More about tacticals in a minute. The backpack increases your inventory space. The gold one lets you res others faster and give them more initial health. Heat shields temporarily protect you from the storm. Mobile respawn beacons allow you to mobily respawn at a beacon anywhere on the map at any time for any reason, so help you God. Apex Legends is a movement-based first-person shooter, player versus player game. Movement is the thing that sold me on this game. In some games you build, in some games you take cover and peek. In this game, you move. Mastering the movement mechanics not only makes the game extremely fun and rewarding to play, it also increases your likelihood of survival. Walking, self-explanatory. Running, you'll run slower if you have a gun in your hand. Jumping, if you're new, probably don't try shooting and jumping. Yes, you'll make yourself harder to hit, but you'll also mess up your own aim. Climbing and mantling. Fundamental to Apex, and recently ripped off by Fortnite, is the ability to climb up or mantle surfaces. Push forward and jump when near a large obstacle to climb up and over it. This provides many options when traversing the maps and when in combat. I honestly have a hard time playing any shooter that does not have this mechanic because it feels so natural and so fundamental. I understand that most games do, but apparently Fortnite didn't until like a month ago. Ducking, crouching. Hide behind cover, move silently to sneak up on enemies. Sliding. Hit the crouch button while you have momentum, usually while running, to perform a slide. This is another core mechanic in Apex.
Sliding down hills increases speed.
Slide across open spaces to make yourself harder to hit. Slide jump while repositioning to get there faster. Slide jumping, by the way, gives you a slight speed boost. It's faster than simply running. Mastering sliding and shooting will give you a major leg up in combat. And it just feels so good! Strafing. There's a more complicated definition of strafing that we'll get into the combat section, but for now, strafing just means moving left and right while shooting. Different guns allow for different strafing speeds. Your strafing speed will also change depending on if you're ADS or hip fire. Do this to die less. There's a bunch of other fancy mechanics as well, like tap strafing, jump shots, wall bouncing, and bunny hopping. They're really hard to do, and I still suck at them.
Wanna fly, compadre?
What do you octane?
Let's fly.
At the legendary beginning of each legendary match, you, the legend, will pick from a roster of legends, because it is in fact called Apex Legends. Each legend has unique abilities that help determine playstyle and give them the upper hand. Each legend has 3 main mechanics. A passive, something that happens or is available to the player in the background all the time. A tactical, we call it a Q because you use the Q button. An ability accessible by hitting a button, usually the Q button, usually a little smaller in scope with a faster cooldown. An ultimate.
Signaling an airstrike.
An ability accessible by hitting 2 buttons, usually the tactical, the Q button, and the ping button together, usually a little bigger in scope with a slower cooldown. It's important to be extremely familiar with all of the legends and legend abilities to not only pick your favorites that match your playstyle, but also to understand how your opponents will use them against you and how to counter their abilities. Read the legend abilities in the legend menu. Spend time watching YouTube videos and experimenting in-game with all of the different legends that you can afford to unlock. Your playstyle will vary greatly depending on the legend that you play, if you're doing it right. Familiarity and understanding of the legends and how their abilities affect the game is crucial to winning. We won't go through all the legends and their abilities here because, again, I want this video to be relevant in future seasons, but here's a basic walkthrough of stuff that should remain relatively the same. Octane and Pathfinder will be focused on movement, getting the advantage with positioning. Watson and Caustic will be focused on fortification, getting the advantage with traps and defense. Bloodhound, Crypto, and Seer will be focused on recon, getting the advantage with clearer information on enemies. Learn your legend. Learn to play to their strengths. Use your recon skills, which we'll discuss later, to identify which legends are in the enemy team. Learn how to counter them. So I reached out to my cousin, who is a master ranked player, for some thoughts and advice. This is what he told me. It's just thinking and playing smart. Game sense is huge. Knowing what people are going to do in rotations, remembering where people landed, where circle is going, where teams are currently at, it all makes a massive difference. I know at all times where people are, generally speaking. Some people might surprise me with an Octane pad or Valk ult, but usually I know what's going on. Gunplay is just muscle memory, and that just comes with time, but playing smart is more important anyways. That's what actually gets you wins. Let's talk about all the stuff beyond gameplay, which we can all learn and apply right now. So I've been reading off of a script, and squad composition is just completely blank. Apparently I don't have a lot of thoughts here. So rather than say anything specific, I'll just say that squad composition is important. There are a lot of legends in this game, and your squad only gets 3 of them. There are a lot of ways for you to work cohesively as a team and play to your legend's strengths. So think about your squad composition before you go into the match, if you can. Try to use all 3 legends' abilities as a group.
I'm the jump master.
So you've got a pretty big decision about your gameplay right at the beginning of the match. Where do you want to drop? Where you drop determines a lot about how early on you'll take fights and how many fights you'll take and how long it'll take you to move to the next ring, etc. Do you want to drop hot and participate in a 4-squad scramble for the 3 available guns upon landing? Or do you want to land just outside of a hot drop zone, loot up, and then go clean up the hot drop mess? Or do you want to drop at a different POI with 1 or 2 other squads so that there's more fights, but there's also more loot? Or do you want to land at a POI alone and really get a good loadout before rotating in for the next ring? The biggest difference comes in ranked matches versus public matches, pubs. In public games, most people want to take fights and see how many kills they can get, regardless of the win, because there's nothing to lose. In ranked matches, most players take a more careful, territorial approach, being more careful to rotate early and protect their squad, as match position and kills are much more important. They have their RP on the line. When you land on the ground, you will have depending on the season, very little on your person. You must gather and acquire everything you might need from the ground, loot boxes, and care packages. The process of looting, and what you might want, is an especially personal activity. Everyone does it differently. But here's what I've been recommended by many professionals and high-ranking players as a generally good-looking inventory. Pick your guns and max them out with attachments and hop-ups. Enough ammo for both guns. Generally, you'll just need 1 to 2 stacks of shotgun and sniper, maybe 3 stacks for arrows, but you'll want 4 to 5 stacks for light, heavy, and energy. 2 medkits is usually good, 4 to 6 or maybe even 8 batteries, 4 syringes, 8 to 16 cells, as many throwables as you can fit after that. Generally, you're going to want to loot as fast as possible. Most new players take way too long looting. Unfortunately, they end up playing a looting simulator for 10 minutes and then die in their first gunfight. In my opinion, that's not fun, and that's not the way to improve. When high-ranking squads land alone at a POI, they loot the entire place, craft what they need to, and move out before the first ring starts to close. Let me emphasize for new players, there is absolutely no reason to lollygag about and take time finding the perfect loadout, especially when you're new and you might die early anyway. The way that you'll get better is by taking fights. The way to make this game fun, for most people, is to take fights. Look, if you like playing the looting simulator and that's for you, more power to you. But I find that hecka boring. Because think about it, all you need for a fight is 1 gun and some ammo for it. That's literally it. Everything else is extra. It helps in the long game, absolutely. So loot, but loot quickly. Positioning is a thing in my script, also with no information for some reason. Positioning is just super important. You want to think about where you are in relation to the circle. You want to think about where you are in relation to other teams. You want to always be in the most advantageous spot possible. You want to be inside the ring, not outside of it. You want to be in the high ground instead of the low ground. You want a lot of cover. You want to control the building. Now, we talk about game sense like it's this magical, unknowable thing that you just kind of have to have. When I first heard this term, I was very intimidated by it. And it took me a long time to realize that game sense is actually something you can learn. Like, certainly some people will have it more naturally, but there's no reason why we can't all improve with it. So let's talk about this game sense that was so intimidating to me at first, because as far as I can tell, it's simply a deep understanding of the game and an awareness of the current match. Like my cousin said, knowing where your enemies are and playing smart is the key to winning the game. So how do we know where enemies are? This is the activity of recon. Watch the squads fall out of the dropship. Watch them even as you're dropping with your own squad. You can see by their tails which direction they're going, and you can get a pretty good idea of which POIs have more teams and how busy they'll be. You can then compare your mental map of general squad locations to the actual map as the rings close. This will be super helpful in predicting where teams will be and how they will rotate into the circle. Listen in 2 ways. Both are important. Listening meaning 1. Listen for the in-game audio cues. Do you hear gunfire, explosions, footsteps? It's very important to pay attention to those audio cues. That's how you know where the other teams are. How far away are they? Where are they located? How long have those sounds been going on? If you pay attention to those audio cues, you'll know where other teams are. Then you can choose whether to follow them for a third-party opportunity or simply to expect that those teams will be there, but you now have the information. Listening meaning number 2. Respond to your teammates' pings immediately, especially if you're not using comms. Does this mean to push every time a teammate pings an enemy? No, but it does mean that you need to stop the looting that you're doing and look in the direction of the ping. You need to understand what your teammate is saying. Are the enemies far off, or are they close? Are they pushing you? Is your teammate pushing them? Too many new players are given loads of important information by their teammates, and they simply ignore it because they're trying to decide which sight to use on their gun. It's more important to respond to the ping than to use the perfect sight. And to be clear, new Apex player who's watching this video, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to me. Because way too many of my friends died over and over and over again when I was trying to learn this game because they would tell me to do something and I would ignore them. Everything in this game is information. And the whole game of it is quickly and appropriately responding to that information. Listen. Listen to the audio cues. Listen to your teammates. Players leave a trail behind them. Even if you're not Bloodhound, you can track your enemies. Open doors, broken doors, open loot boxes, abandoned tridents, leftover abilities like jump pads, zip lines, rampart walls, death boxes. These are signs that players were here and could still be here. Another big mistake that I made when I was first playing was simply being too focused on my own trajectory and not looking around the environment. You can see the other players, like obviously, even from far away. So just look for them. Look around for them. Look for the identifiable silhouettes of the different legends, like Valkyrie's wings or Gibraltar's shield, as well as any specific abilities that they might be using in order to know who you're fighting. Okay, so we see another team. Now what? Well, more than likely we're gonna wanna fight them, cause it's a fighting game. The whole goal when you're in combat is to down the other team without getting downed yourself. It's a balance of protecting your own life while still trying to inflict damage on your opponent. It's a dance. You're bobbing and weaving and dodging and peeking. So how do we do that? First, general rules of thumb. Do prioritize life, then damage, then everything else. For the most part, don't prioritize kills, thirsts, pushing, repositioning, or anything else above your own life or inflicting damage. So, we use all this information that we've gathered in our recon. We know where the enemy is. Now we can decide whether and how to engage. Don't immediately push. We want to use the stealth to our advantage. New players often announce their squad too early by firing without the ability to capitalize on their damage. The best way to aggro or begin an engagement is to use our element of surprise. Or if we don't have that, to then find other advantages on our opponent. The main way to ensure that you survive and your enemies don't is to look for, create, and capitalize on advantages. You could have a health advantage where you have more shields and health than your opponent. You can use abilities, nades, or poke damage with bullets to see if you can sufficiently weaken the team enough to push. You can also have a positional advantage. You can have cover, you can have high ground, you can be in the circle. The more advantage you have, the better your odds for success. Decide how you will engage, then go. Keep in mind that sometimes you're the one who gets aggroed. A team starts the fight with you before you realize it. They had the element of surprise. In that situation, you want to try to even the playing field however possible. The ideal solution is to move to a new position and top up on your health in order to reset the fight. The next best thing is to use abilities, grenades, and your own movement to limit the options of your opponent. When your opponent has less choices, that increases your level of survival. And of course, sometimes it just comes down to gunplay. Best man or highest DPS weapon wins.
Yeah, Robin Hood.
Oh!
Sorry, I got distracted. I'm really proud of that clip. Where were we? So, we've aggroed a team, or we've been aggroed ourselves. We got an advantage, or reset the fight as best we could. We're in active conflict now. We are in the fight. So here's a list of a bunch of techniques and concepts that I've gathered by playing myself and listening to my friends and watching YouTubers that we can use to think about combat differently and to try to outplay our opponents. Like I said, the idea of combat is that you're ducking and weaving. The basic pattern is to stay behind cover while your opponent fires. Then you peek and fire out a clip. Then you reposition to the other side or a different piece of cover, and then you fire again. Always be moving so that the opposing squad can't zero in on you. Always minimize the damage that you're taking, especially using cover. Always maximize the damage you're outputting. Try to be unpredictable. Hit your shots. This comes down to practice and muscle memory built with time. The more you play with intention and the more you practice in the firing range, the better you'll get. Strafe when exposed to make yourself harder to hit. Generally, the more you move, the harder you are to kill. But also, the harder it will be to hit your own shots. Move more if your health is low. Move less if their health is low so you can confirm the knock. Use cover. The map's geometry is your best friend. Bullets move in a straight line. Keep your enemies out of sight unless you're actively firing on them. Use doors. Doors have pretty much always been meta. If you sit behind them, your opponent won't be able to open them. They'll have to shoot or kick their way in, which gives you time. You can heal behind them. You can open and close them to peek. You can move from one side to the other for like a significant position change. You can do a lot with doors. If your enemy is using doors against you, you can kick it in, but be careful, because if you're in the middle of a melee animation and the door breaks, you will be stuck and your enemy can fire at you. It's usually better to shoot down or grenade the door, or just reposition entirely. Always look for more information. Ask yourself questions about what's going on. Try to understand the fight. Where are the enemies? Where are your allies? Where are they moving? Who has advantage? Are they retreating? Are they pushing? How much health do you have? How much health do your enemies have? How much health do your teammates have? Ask these questions and look for the information as much as you can. You should be peeking consistently to try to gain that information, even while regaining shields. Use nades and abilities to inflict damage behind cover. Remember we said that geometry is your best friend? Grenades are the one exception. Grenades and abilities can get behind cover in some cases. Use that to your advantage. You can also use grenades and abilities in your escape to make chasing you more dangerous and difficult. Watch your health. Use cells and batteries whenever you have a moment in the safety of the fight. You want your health as high as it can possibly be at all times. Shield swap. When a player has been eliminated, the body shield that they were wearing will be back at full and sitting in their death box. If your shields are low, swapping your body armor with a killed enemy is faster than popping a battery. You've won, but you're potentially low on health and resources. You're vulnerable. Loot as quickly as possible and move on. Watch out for third parties. The third party obviously has the most advantageous status. They have a significant stealth and health advantage. You want to be the third party, you don't want to get third-partied. If you fought for very long at all, it is very likely that more squads will be coming to clean up the mess. It's a good idea after nearly every gunfight to shield swap or immediately pop a battery to top your health off before looting in case of third parties. Again, remember we're playing with real people. Comms are silly. I love them. Sometimes you get really interesting people that are fun to talk to and really good players that are fun to play with. And sometimes you get little whiners and complainers and angry kids. And sometimes you get toxic, negative, gross people who yell at you the whole time. So to finish off this video, I want to end with a collection of tips from other players who are significantly better than me that didn't fit into another category. You can turn on auto run, and as a controller player, why on earth would you not? Why would you ever want your default speed to be walking? I don't know. Mouse and keyboard has a few advantages over controller, but those advantages don't matter if you feel like you're fighting your hardware. Yes, you have to take some time to learn a new control scheme, but pick what feels the most intuitive to you. Don't let keyboard warriors scare you into using a control scheme if you're not as good at it. Same goes for your monitor, your keybinds, your console versus PC, anything else. It comes down to preference. I have friends who play on controller who are way better than other keyboard friends, and vice versa. Movement is critical in this game. If you play controller, but even on mouse and keyboard, you may be at a disadvantage by using the default keybinds. Consider a controller with extra buttons on the back to increase your options for movement. Or consider an alternate control scheme that gives you faster access to movement options. Play around with keybinds and personalization of controls. There is no right way. Whatever feels best for you is the right way. It is a good idea to spend a lot of time dialing in your sensitivity, but only change your sense a bit at a time. Change it a bit, and then spend a couple of days adjusting before you change it again. Constantly and dramatically changing your sense settings will only make it harder to play.
Nice.
Jeez. Have fun. This is a big one. If you're beginning to rage, turn the game off and come back later. It's ultimately a game, and getting angry at it only makes life more unpleasant for you and everyone around you. I've been surprised at the number of times that I've played with a random who I overhear in the background yelling at their significant other or their kids because the video game has made them angry. It is not sacrificing your mental health or the well-being of your significant others to play this damn game. If it's making you angry, turn it off. To improve, you're gonna need to die a lot, so be willing to die a lot. Be okay with it. Try to evaluate your game and see if you could have played better. Often there is something to be learned and improved, but sometimes the other team was just better, and that's okay. It's okay to admit that. It's okay to admit that. Remember, you can destroy opponents' tacticals like caustic traps, rampart walls, and Watson fences by shooting them. Be active when you are downed. Use your shield to protect your team. Move out of fire to increase your likelihood of survival. Ping your teammates to give them information on the enemy that they may not have. Remember to compete with yourself, not necessarily others. I realize that sounds ironic in a game about beating others, but if you're working with a goal to win all of your games or to never get down, you're gonna get insanely frustrated. The way I have found to successfully measure skill improvement is the same way that many athletes do. You measure your current performance against your previous performance, not against the generic stats of the game and not against other players.
Wow, I can't hit a single shot, man. I'm so bad with... Ooh.
So that right there is everything that I have learned about Apex Legends in the past 3 months. My brain is fried, this game is hard.
Got one. Enemy down.